before 1619, before the United States even existed, black people known as Moors. The Moorish roots of Black America, from Spain to the 14th Amendment before slavery, before 1619, before the United States even existed, black people known as Moors ruled cities, signed treaties, built empires, and even explored the Americas alongside Europeans. This is the untold story of how Moorish identity shaped Black American history. Alhambra, Cordoba, Moroccan cities like Fez and Marrakesh. In medieval Spain and North Africa, Moors were Muslims of African descent, Black Berbers, Arabs, and Sub-Saharan Africans. Spanish records called them Moros Negros. Portuguese chroniclers used Moros Negros. They were rulers, scholars, and seafarers, not slaves. Columbus's journal, African Ships Approaching the Americas. Even Columbus acknowledged that Africans reached the Americas before him. He wrote that, "The people of Guinea have navigated to this coast and traded with the Indians. The Indians brought pieces of metal for trading, and I asked them where they came from. They replied, 'From the south, where there are people who have swords and who are very warlike.' They said the metal was called guanine, and that it came from black men who came in boats from the south and southeast. These were the Guinea Moors, Black Muslims from West Africa who had long-distance maritime contact with Native Americans. In the 15th to 17th centuries, European explorers, especially the Portuguese and Spanish, used Guinea to describe the entire West African coast, south of the Sahara, and north of the equator, stretching roughly from Senegal to Cameroon. It included several major regions: Upper Guinea, modern Senegal, Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Grain Coast, Liberia, Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, Gold Coast, Ghana, Slave Coast, Togo, Benin, Western Nigeria. So when Columbus, the Portuguese, or early Spanish texts mention Guinea, they're not referring just to the country now called Guinea, but to the entire coastal area rich in trade, especially in gold, ivory, and later slaves. Esteban the Moor explorer of the American Southwest, and in the early 1500s, a black Berber named Esteban or Stephen the Moor became one of the first non-native people to explore the American Southwest. Originally from Morocco, Esteban was a black Moor enslaved by the Portuguese, later taken to the Americas. He traveled through Florida, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, years before English colonists even arrived. Spanish records described him as a Moor from Azamor, a city on Morocco's Atlantic coast. He spoke multiple languages, served as a guide, and was seen by indigenous tribes as a figure of power. Esteban was not a passive servant. He was a pioneering explorer. Portugal invades Morocco, enslaves black Moors. In the 1400s, Portugal launched crusades into Morocco, capturing cities like Ceuta, Tangier, and Azamor. They enslaved thousands of Moros Negros, black Moors, including men like Esteban. These captives were transported to Europe and the Americas. Doctrine of discovery authorizes enslavement of Moors under the doctrine of discovery. Popes granted Spain and Portugal the right to enslave Saracens, Moors, and pagans. This launched a centuries-long war on black Muslims and Jews, labeling them threats to Christian civilization. Black Moors in slave manifests. In the Americas, black Moors were renamed Negros, Moriscos, Guinea blacks. But in early records, you still find entries for Moro, Moreno, Moorish slave. Definitions: American Cyclopedia and Webster. Americans in the 1800s knew the meaning of Moor. The 1828 Webster Dictionary, a black or tawny man, a Negro. The 1873 American Cyclopedia. The term was often used to denote Arabs, Berbers, and Negroes of a Mohammedan faith. The term Moor carried racial, cultural, and religious meaning, especially when applied to black Muslims. John Jay and the U.S.-Morocco Treaty. In 1786, the U.S. signed a treaty with Morocco brokered by Chief Justice John Jay. It protected all Moors or Moroccan subjects on American soil, black or otherwise. Some free black Americans used this treaty to claim Moorish identity, arguing they were not subject to enslavement under U.S. law. David Walker's appeal. In 1829, abolitionist David Walker reminded black Americans, "We once taught the Spaniards. We introduced civilization to them." He was referring to the Moors, black Muslims who ruled Iberia and brought science, architecture, and governance to Europe. Walker saw the Moors as proof that African Americans came from greatness. Free African Society. Richard Allen Absalom Jones. In Philadelphia, the Free African society led by Richard Allen and Absalom Jones sometimes identified themselves as Moors, not as slaves but as a proud people with a royal and spiritual legacy, fraternal orders and Moorish imagery. Black Freemasons and other fraternal orders like Prince Hall Masons adopted Moorish names and symbols to reflect wisdom, dignity, African royalty. Courtroom cases: James Moore, John Hannibal North. Some free black Americans went to court invoking Moorish nationality. James Moore, a Virginian, claimed Moroccan identity to avoid state slave laws. John Hannibal North, a sailor, was listed as a Moor in maritime records. These were bold legal strategies rooted in treaty law and a sovereign identity. Blackamoor in newspapers during 14th Amendment debates. During the 1860s, American newspapers still used the term blackamoor to describe black citizens. The word evoked foreignness, exoticism, and unbelonging. It reflected a country where black people were still seen as outsiders even during debates over civil rights. Today, many black Americans carry E1B1A, West Africa, E1B1B, North African, Berber, Iberian, Moorish, and Moroccan ancestry. Some of these traces link directly back to Moors like Esteban Moriscos and Moros Negros enslaved and dispersed across the Atlantic. In 1920 in Harlem, another voice rose. Rabbi Wentworth Arthur Matthew, founder of the Moorish Zionist Temple of the Moorish Jews. This was the earliest known black Hebrew congregation in the United States to explicitly use the term Moorish in its name, combining African Jewish and Moorish identity. Matthew taught that black Americans were descendants of the ancient Israelites and that their path ran through North Africa, Morocco, and Moorish Spain. His message was clear. We are the lost Hebrew Moors, scattered by slavery but remembered through prophecy. Dressed in robes resembling Moorish North African attire, Rabbi Matthew built a congregation rooted in Hebraic law, Zionist ideals, and Moorish African history. The temple would later evolve into the Commandment Keepers Congregation. A major influence on the Black Hebrew Israelite movement reclaimed the name Moor as a symbol of lost nobility, spiritual heritage, cultural continuity. In the 1926, Noble Drew Ali founded the Moorish Science Temple and proclaimed, "You are Moorish Americans, descendants of the ancient Moors of Morocco." He drew on the Morocco-U.S. Treaty, Islamic history, and 19th century writings like David Walker's Appeal. Moors conquer Spain. 711 CE Afonso I captured Santarem from the Moors. 1147 King Afonso III captured Algar from the Moors. 1240s Portugal invades Morocco. 1415 Moors expelled from Granada. 1492 Columbus discovers Guinea Moors trading with indigenous Americans. 1492 Esteban the Moor explores America. 1520s Treaty of Peace and Friendship with Morocco. 1786 David Walker's Appeal. 1829 14th Amendment ratified. 1868 Moorish Zionist Temple founded in Harlem. 1920 Moorish Science Temple founded in Chicago. 1926. This isn't revisionist history. This is our history, restored. The Moors were never lost. They were reclassified, renamed, and resisted. From Esteban to David Walker, from John Jay's treaty to Rabbi Matthew's temple, from Moorish Muslims to Moorish Jews. This is our story, and we're reclaiming it. If you enjoyed this video, type #whitewash in the chat, like, comment, and subscribe to restore Moorish memory, because Black history is Moorish history. Before the term Moor was used in Europe, it existed in Semitic languages, and its meaning was... Before the term Moor...
is Ibrahim Traore. You might know me as a young military leader, someone you call a radical or an anti-Western dictator, but today I'm here to tell the truth. I'm speaking directly to big news companies like CNN, BBC, France 24, New York Times, Washington Post, The Guardian, and Le Monde. I'm watching you. I'm keeping track of every lie you tell, every story you twist, and every truth you hide. This time, you can't turn off my voice. You can't shut off your cameras or edit my words. The world you used to control is gone. Millions of people will hear me now, without your filters, without your lies. I'm 34 years old. I grew up hearing your stories about Africa. As a child, I watched your news on TV. The pictures were always the same. Hungry children with flies on their faces, dry lands, wars, and death. You told us this is Africa. You made us feel ashamed of our home, our people, and our land. We believed you because we were young and didn't know better. But as I grew older, I started to read, ask questions, and learn. I realized the Africa you showed us wasn't real. It was a story you made up. You wrote a script for us, and it was full of lies. The false story of Africa. You, the big news companies, have shown Africa in a bad way for years. You make it look like Africans are not human, like we are wild people who can't take care of ourselves. You show us as poor, helpless, and lost, waiting for you to save us. Every day your TV screens and newspapers talk about hunger, war, sickness, corruption, terror, and chaos. These are the only words you use for Africa. You never talk about hope, success, growth, strength, honor, pride, or victories. Why? Because those words don't fit the story you want to tell. Let me ask you, have you ever made Africa's successes your big headlines? Have you told the world about Rwanda's amazing technology growth? Have you shown Ethiopia's huge project to plant millions of trees? Have you praised Botswana for its strong democracy? Have you talked about Kenya's smart business ideas and young entrepreneurs? No, you haven't. Those stories don't fit your plan. In your story, Africa can't be successful. If Africa is doing well, how can you justify taking our resources? If we're not poor and weak, why would we need your help? If we're not backward, how can you look down on us? I want to ask the people who run your newsrooms, have you ever thought about why Africa, a land full of riches, has so many poor people? Let me give you some facts, real numbers that show the truth. Africa's wealth and poverty. Africa has so much wealth, but our people don't see it. Here are some examples. Cobalt. Africa has 70% of the world's cobalt. Cobalt is used in your cell phones, computers, and electric cars. Most of it comes from Congo, but the people in Congo can't afford phones or computers. Why? Platinum. Africa has 90% of the world's platinum. Platinum is used in car parts, electronics, and medical tools. It comes from South Africa, but South Africans struggle with unemployment and poverty. Gold. Africa produces 30% of the world's gold. Countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, Ghana, and Tanzania have huge gold mines, but our people live in poverty while gold flows out of our lands. Diamonds. Africa supplies 65% of the world's diamonds. Countries like Botswana, Angola, Congo, and Sierra Leone produce billions of dollars worth of diamonds. But miners in those countries earn just $1 a day. Uranium. Africa has 35% of the world's uranium, which powers nuclear plants. Niger, Namibia, and South Africa produce it. Your cities, like Paris, have electricity because of our uranium, but our villages stay dark. You ask, why is Africa poor? That's the wrong question. The real question is, how is Africa kept poor when it's so rich? The answer is simple. Colonialism never ended. It just changed its face. How colonialism continues. In the past, you came to Africa with armies and took our lands. Now you come with companies and contracts. You used to rule us with whips and guns. Now you control us with loans and deals. Let me give you examples with names, numbers, and facts. Lancor. This is a Swiss company that mines cobalt in Congo. In 2022, they made $256 billion in revenue, but they paid Congo only $500 million in taxes. That's just 0.2% of their earnings. Is that fair? Rio Tinto. This British-Australian company mines bauxite in Guinea. They take out 20 million tons every year. What does Guinea get? Pollution and sickness. Total Energies. This French oil company works in Angola, Nigeria, and Congo. In 2022, they made $36 billion in profit, but they leave behind old, dirty pipelines and poor communities. Anglo American. This company started in South Africa but is now based in London. They take diamonds, platinum, and iron. What's left in South Africa? Millions of unemployed miners. These are just a few examples. There's more you don't see. Secret deals, hidden bank accounts, and tricks to avoid taxes. Every year, $88 billion leaves Africa illegally. That's money stolen from our people. You write about the $45 billion in aid that comes to Africa, but you don't talk about the wealth that leaves. Africa isn't receiving aid, it's giving aid to the world. The system that keeps Africa poor. There's a system that keeps Africa poor, and it works like this. Create corruption. You bribe our leaders. You give them secret bank accounts and promise them a fancy life. You send their children to your schools. In return, they sell our resources to you. Make unfair deals. You get long contracts, 50 years, even 99 years to take our resources. You ask for tax breaks and ignore rules about protecting the environment or workers' rights. Control infrastructure. You take over our ports, airports, and railways, but only to move resources from mines to ships. You don't build roads for our villages or bring electricity to our schools. Provide security. You set up private security companies and arm them. If people protest, you call them rebels or terrorists. Silence the media. You pay local journalists to stay quiet. You stop voices that speak against you. You show the world only the bad news about Africa, like wars and unrest. This system has been working for over 100 years. You, the big news companies, are part of it. Your biggest advertisers are the same companies that take Africa's resources, oil companies, mining companies, and arms dealers. You take their money, so you protect their interests. The truth about France, Britain, America, and China. Let me tell you about the systems used by powerful countries to control Africa. France and the CFA France. 14 African countries still use a currency controlled by France called the CFA France. Half of these countries' money is kept in the French treasury. France charges us to use our own money. Every year, $500 billion in resources flows from Africa to France. When France gives $10 billion in aid, you make it big news. But you don't talk about the $500 billion they take. Britain and money laundering. London is the world's center for hiding stolen money. Africa's wealth is moved through places like Jersey, Guernsey, the Cayman Islands, and the Virgin Islands, all controlled by Britain. You don't write about this. America and military control. The U.S. has 46 military bases in Africa through its Africa Command. They say it's for security, but it's really about controlling our resources. Drones fly over our skies every day watching us. They say they're fighting terrorists, but they target leaders who stand up for Africa. China's new game. China says they want to help Africa by building roads and giving loans, but in return they take 99-year contracts for our ports, mines, and farmland. Countries like Sri Lanka and Zambia are now trapped in debt to China. Is this really win-win? You don't write about these things because you're not free. You're controlled by billionaires. Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. Rupert Murdoch controls Fox News, the Wall Street Journal, and the Times. Carlos Slim, a Mexican billionaire, is a major shareholder in the New York Times. These people didn't get rich by helping Africa. They got rich by exploiting places like Africa and Latin America. Your editors come from elite schools like Harvard, Yale, Oxford, and Cambridge. They share the same ideas and biases. Your reporters in Africa often don't speak our languages, like Swahili, Hausa, Yoruba, or Amharic. They can't talk to our people, so they rely on Western diplomats and NGOs for information. How can you call that fair reporting? The heroes they silenced. Let me tell you about the African leaders you've ignored or lied about. Patrice Lumumba, he was the leader of Congo, killed on January 17, 1961. The CIA and Belgian mercenaries were involved. They dissolved his body in acid and kept his teeth as souvenirs. In 2022, Belgium returned one tooth to his family after 61 years. You called it chaos in Congo, but didn't investigate the killers or Belgium's crimes. Thomas Sankara, he was my hero, the leader of Burkina Faso, killed on October 15th. Sankara vaccinated 2.5 million children, planted 10 million trees, raised literacy from 13% to 73%, gave women equal rights, banned harmful practices, and fought corruption. He refused to pay Africa's unfair debts to the West. France supported his killer, Blaise Compaoré. You called it a military coup, but didn't tell the world about Sankara's dreams or successes. Muammar Gaddafi. Yes, he was a dictator, but he did a lot for Libya. Under him, Libya had a high income, free healthcare, free education, and cheap fuel. He built a huge irrigation project to make the desert green. His biggest dream was a united Africa with its own bank and currency. He was killed on October 20th, 2011, after NATO attacked Libya. Hillary Clinton laughed about it. Now Libya has 3 governments, civil war, and even slave markets. You call this democracy? These leaders were killed because they stood up for Africa. They wanted us to control our own wealth and future, but you didn't tell their stories. You called them dictators, or said their countries were chaotic. You didn't show their successes, or ask who was behind their deaths. Africa is rising. I'm speaking today because it's time for the truth. The world you controlled, where you could hide Africa's story, is gone. People are waking up. We're tired of your lies. We're tired of being shown as poor and helpless. Africa is rich, not just in resources, but in people, ideas, and strength. We're building our future, and we won't let you write our story anymore. I know speaking out is risky. Telling the truth might cost me my life, like it did for Lumumba, Sankara, and Gaddafi. But I'm not afraid. Africa is rising, and we need everyone to join us. If you're inspired by this message, share it, talk about it, Tell the world the truth about Africa.
Amen.
Support leaders who fight for our people,
You
like
got
I'm
it.
trying to do in Burkina Faso. Together, we can change the story. We can
I'm
show the
praying for you
world
that
who
God
we
keep
really
you
are.
alive.
Not the Africa you see on CNN or BBC, but the real Africa, full of hope, pride, and power.
Amen.
Thank you for listening. Let's make Africa's voice heard. Let's build a future where our children aren't ashamed of who they are. Africa is rising. Be part of the change.
Amen.
My dear people of Burkina Faso, fellow Africans, and friends across the world, I stand before you today with a message of truth, responsibility, and vision. I recently addressed our brilliant African students studying at the prestigious Dmitry Mendeleev University in Russia, a place of great scientific knowledge. And today I want to share that same message with you all. Our cooperation with Russia is not about begging for financial aid or handouts. We are not there to ask for money. We are not there to depend on others. No. Our partnership is built on something more powerful, education and the transfer of scientific knowledge. It is knowledge that will free us. It is knowledge that will build our nations. It is knowledge that will make Africa strong and self-reliant. I saw young Africans studying chemistry, radiotechnology, and advanced sciences, subjects that our countries urgently need to master. Yet many of us back home studied these subjects only in theory. From high school to university, we learn to balance chemical equations, calculate thermodynamic values, and memorize scientific laws, but we do not practice them. Since my school days, I remember how students struggled with the periodic table. Some joke that Mendeleev, who created the table, did it just to confuse us. Why? Because we never saw how it applied to real life. We studied it on paper, but never in a lab. That is the problem with our education systems. We teach theory, but we don't provide the tools to practice. We don't have the laboratories, we don't have the equipment. And without those, we cannot turn knowledge into real solutions for our people. That is why I told our students, do not become theorists like I was. Become scientists, engineers, and innovators who can build, create, and solve real problems. Look around us. Everything from the chairs we sit on to the weapons we need to defend our nations is the result of chemistry and science. We import iron and steel from around the world, even though we could produce them ourselves through basic electrolysis. Why are we buying galvanized iron from China when we could make it in Burkina Faso? We are at war. We need ammunition. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger produce cotton. And from cotton you get cellulose, which is used to make gunpowder. So why are we not producing it? Because we have not learned to apply chemistry in real life. Even the armor that protects military vehicles is made from a specific type of steel, created by adding elements like carbon. It's not magic, it's science. And it's science we already understand on paper. But until we practice it, we will remain dependent. Look at the missiles and technologies Russia has developed. Chemistry is behind every single one. Even the fuel that powers a rocket is chemistry. These are things we must be able to do ourselves. And let me say this clearly. Russia is not weak. The world may try to rewrite history, but the truth remains. Russia has produced great scholars in physics, chemistry, and mathematics. Look at Mendeleev, the man who organized all matter into one table. He was Russian. So I say to our young people, you are lucky to be there. Learn, but learn with your hands, not just with your minds. Learn to create, to build, and to serve your people. And to all of Africa, let us rise. Let us invest in practical education. Let us build universities and laboratories that train engineers, not just graduates. Let us turn theory into action and knowledge into independence. The future of Burkina Faso and the future of Africa depends on it. Thank you. May God bless Burkina Faso. May God bless Africa.
Amen.
This is why everyone is uniting behind Ibrahim Traore. He is not the only one in the Sahel. There are three brothers who have chosen to set Africa free. There is Assimi Goïta, there is Abdurrahmani Chani, and then there is Traore. But Traore is standing out. You know why? It's not that he's bigger than his brothers or more important than his brothers. No, it is that God has picked this one up as the
That's right.
sign. I want him to be the sign to the rest of Africa that the time has come. We've been speaking about this Africa's time for so many years. I've made plenty of videos and talked about it. That Africa's time will come and that Africa will be free in our lifetime. Is this not our lifetime when the Sahel became free and got independence for the first time ever in the history of the continent? And now we have many more waiting. They are shocked, they are panicked. And so in the same manner that they framed Muammar Gaddafi, they started with the kind of satanic attitude that General Michael Langley is displaying now. They started with that because it's a psychological thing. They start with psychological warfare, right? They start by accusing the person of oppressing his people, of stealing the wealth of the nation to do stuff for himself. They say he's taking the wealth of Burkina Faso, their gold wealth, and he's using it to protect himself and not the people. Meanwhile, the mainstream media has refused to go and fact check Michael Langley and the rest of them from the EU who are accusing our brother wrongly. If it was something else right now, they would have rushed over to the country to go and fact check. But they don't want to go and fact check to tell us truly how in the world is Ibrahim Traore using the money he's making from gold to protect himself rather than to better the lives of his people, which is actually what he's doing. He is bettering the lives. And people are on their own, jumping out and saying, whoa, look what is happening in our country. We've never seen this ever. They're lying. So the mainstream media, what? If not that we are no longer in the days when they took Gaddafi away, that we are now in a different era where this kind of madness will never repeat on the continent of Africa, they would have already struck. And by the time they struck, you'll see the mainstream media rush over there to go and tell you how that, oh, this man was such a bad person. They will bring crisis actors who will come out and say, oh, Ibrahim Traore oppressed me and my family. He even put us in a cage. He stole all our money and everything. That's what he did to Gaddafi. I'm so thankful for social media, because those days when they killed the Gaddafi, mainstream media held sway. They were in charge. Social media wasn't as powerful then. Then now that social media is so powerful, how people have been sufficiently, may not even be sufficient, but how people have been adequately educated and informed on what really happened to Gaddafi. And because of what happened to Gaddafi, Africans are so angry. And they have made up their minds and vowed that whatever it takes, it repeats of what happened to Gaddafi will not be allowed again anywhere on the continent, not to talk of the Sahel region, where we can now finally boast of being Africans for once in our lives. You want to touch the Sahel? I saw the lion woman called Ursula von der Leyen. I actually prefer to call Ursula von der Leyen, who claimed, this was actually a video she made sometime in 2022, which was the time that Ibrahim Traore showed up on the stage. That was when they began to panic big time, because of course France is a part of the cult of colonials who have decided that Africans will never rise up. Because according to the former president of France, Jacques Chirac, who told the truth, uncomfortable truth for once in his life, without Africa, France would descend into the ranks of third world countries. Not just France, but most of the EU countries. Why can't you then come into a fair agreement with African countries and come like a buyer and come like a partner and come with respect and say, hey, we want to go into a business deal with you the way you would approach Saudi Arabia or any one of these Arab countries? Why not come that way? No, we must make sure that they are treated as slaves. Even though they own the resources on the ground, we are going to keep treating them like they are slaves and let them know that they don't have access to it. It doesn't belong to you, even though it's in your ground. And you are insulted on top of that. Before Muammar Gaddafi nationalized the oil wealth of Libya, Libya was regarded as about the poorest nation in the whole world. The moment he nationalized it, Libyans lived the best life you could find anywhere on the continent of Africa. Nobody lived better than Libyans. As a young man in Libya under Gaddafi, if you wanted to get married, you had tens of thousands of dollars given to you with a home, free of charge. People, life expectancy went from 0 to almost 100 in Libya. Libya was the most prosperous economy on the continent of Africa under Gaddafi. That's why the man said, this template has worked so well. Let us spread it across the continent of Africa so that Africans will be free. He said to them, stop taking money from IMF, stop taking money from World Bank. These are the guys who are destroying you. I will give you the money. When they saw that, they were like, whoa, someone found our secrets. We need to destroy them right now. They began to carry out this massive propaganda lies. And sadly, our already, I'm repeating it. People are pouring into Burkina Faso because they want to defend motherland. They want to fight alongside Ibrahim Traore. These are signs. There are signs that when you see, you can never deny them. This is one of them. Our time has come. And what I want to tell you as an African, or someone who loves Africans, or who loves our course, who believes that we actually deserve to be human beings and be treated as human beings, what I want you to do is, whatever you can contribute, let's not just stop at making videos. Let us go beyond making videos and reach out to Ibrahim Traore by whatever means we can reach out to him. If you want to be a volunteer, show up. And don't ever stop talking about what is going on in Burkina Faso. Because this part that I'm about to tell you is very critical. It is very important. Pay attention to why you should not stop talking about Burkina Faso. You know, the colonials are not just panicked because they lost 3 countries. Because France lost 3 countries. Which is, I've explained this before, which is why they are against Russia and fighting Russia to death. I'm going to come to that. But here's what they are most worried about. They are very worried about the fact that if nothing is done to the likes of Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso and Abdulrahmani Chani of Niger Republic and Assimi Goïta of Mali, if nothing is done to these guys to dismantle them, then the rest of Africa will begin to see what life looks like when a nation is truly independent. And then the rest of Africa will begin to see that all these things they call independence in Nigeria and all the other parts of Africa are fake and mere colonial charades that have called them since so many years now. People are going to begin to see the truth. Oh, if Burkina Faso, that was regarded as one of the poorest nations in Africa, if not the whole world, is suddenly turning the leaf and flipping the script and suddenly on a race to become one of the most prosperous countries in Africa within just 2, 3, 4 years, then what they call independence here has been fake. And the youths of all these nations that have colonial stooges and puppets as presidents, they will become restive and they will begin to ask real questions and begin to seek justice, and they will begin to seek redress immediately. And that's where you're going to see the kind of revolution that will balloon out of Africa. And before you know it, all these youths that everybody thought have been so quiet and so messed up and so propagandized that they can't even think straight, you will see how something will rise up in the youths of Africa, and they will begin to chase out all these colonial puppets that are sitting there, putting their legs on the nations of Africa on behalf of the colonial powers. These are collaborators. The enemies of Africa don't look white. They are blacks. They are from amongst us. They are sellouts. And because of what is happening in Burkina Faso and Niger and Mali, these guys are going to be exposed in real time. This is what the colonials fear the most. This is why they want to go after Ibrahim Traore, so that Africans don't get to know what they are missing and what they are losing when they are not truly independent like the 3 Sahel states. Ibrahim Traore kicked out all the colonial powers, kicked out their corporations, seized 2 gold mines. I think it's 2 out of 3 main ones. He has already taken to nationalized it. And that's why he has enough money to do all these things he's doing in Burkina Faso. Go and see how investors are pouring into Burkina Faso. Go and see. I was traveling to one of these African countries, and we stopped in Ghana. When we stopped in Ghana, just on transit, and I saw the national airline of Burkina Faso before God and a man. When I saw it, it looked like an airline you would expect to come from one of the richest countries in Europe. God is my witness. If you think I'm lying, go check for yourself. It was so beautiful, brand new, looked so elegant, so well maintained and well managed. This is Burkina Faso. Obviously, Nigeria does not have any national airline that you can look at and say, oh, there's none. The giant of Africa, because it has never been free, it has never had any independence. Whatever you call independence in your country, anywhere in Africa, is a charade. If the colonial powers and the corporations are still the ones controlling the resources of your country and giving you paltry 0.something, 5%, 4%, 3% royalty, Do you know what that means? That $1 trillion could be made from your resources and you'll be getting just hundreds of thousands of dollars for the whole nation. That's why the nations can never survive without getting the loans that are the bait from IMF and World Bank. It is intentional. I made a two-part video on YouTube many years ago to explain how France has completely destroyed Africa. And it's not France alone, the colonial powers of Europe, UK, all of them. What they have done to Africa, I don't know how long it will take God to judge it. But today, God says, I have had enough of it. Time has come. Stand up, African youths, and take back what belongs to you. That's why they are angry. Russia. That's why they are angry. You know, they had an agreement with Russia because these guys are liars. They had an agreement many years ago that they were never going to expand eastward towards Russia. And they kept on expanding, claiming nations, Hungary, Slovakia, Czechoslovakia, all of them. They were just assimilating them into NATO. After promising Russia they were not going to do it, when Putin has had enough, Putin decided, you know what, I'm taking the milk from off your mouth. And he came down to Africa and decided to help us to reclaim. The enemy of my enemy is my best friend. Not just my friend, but my best friend. This is why you should, every day you wake up, you should be thanking God for Russia. Do you know that when Burkina Faso situation happened, Russia had a massive contingent, military, boots on ground? You know what they did? They decided to start putting too much pressure on Russia. Pressure. Before you know it, Ukraine just went into a serious misadventure that they knew they were never going to succeed in. They went and invaded Kursk. It is the same army that Russia had in Burkina Faso that they cut down, if not almost all of them, and moved them to go and rescue Kursk alongside the other mercenaries who were fighting on the side of Russia. You see why I told you that the Ukraine war is to make sure that Russia is kept busy so that they don't have the opportunity to help Africa. But they have failed because we will still move and take back what belongs to us. That's why Donald Trump is looking for peace. No matter what you do for peace, they don't want the peace because as far as they're concerned, it is an existential threat for Russia not to be in war. Russia must be constantly in war, losing men. It doesn't matter how many men they lose themselves. Russia must keep losing so that they don't get to help Africa. Then Africa will help itself. And God is with us. And I know that Russia is also with us. Our time has come and nobody can stop it.
Praise God. Thank you, Jesus.
He said it on day one, and now he's doing it. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré took the reins of Burkina Faso, many called him bold, some called him dangerous. But what he promised was sovereignty, resource control, and dignity for his people. Most leaders talk. Traoré acts. In a move that sent shockwaves through global markets, he just took back control of 5 major gold mines, assets that were, for years, drained by foreign companies while Burkinabe communities remained in poverty. But the backlash was immediate. Foreign investors screamed. Western media called it reckless. And the same powers who profited in silence suddenly began crying foul. They say Burkina Faso is now too risky. But here's the question no one's asking. Risky for who? The corporations losing billions? Or the people finally reclaiming what's rightfully theirs? In today's episode, we dive into the gold reforms that are shaking the foundations of neo-colonial control,